What's up, everybody? Today we're talking about Get Out, starring Daniel Kaluuya and written and directed by Jordan Peele. It's about an African-American man visiting his white girlfriend's parents' house and is followed by all kinds of strange things happening in a tension-filled, thriller-esque way.
So what do you think of the movie?
I thought the movie was great.
I did too. I really enjoyed it. It was a really good horror film. I'm a big horror fan, so I thought that this was really well done.
Yes, it was very well done in pretty much every way. I enjoyed the synopsis. I thought it was unique. I thought the thrills were great. The tension, the movie was filled with tension the whole time. The acting, for the most part, was pretty good.
I also really liked the plot. I thought it was a really unique. For the most part, I thought the plot made sense, whereas a lot of times the horror movies, they don't really focus on the plot so much as the jump scares, and at the end, they want to make it this big surprise, and so it doesn't always make sense. So I thought they did a really good job of making the plot really well written, but also making it scary.
Yeah, it flowed pretty well. And although there were a couple of jump scares in it, I didn't feel like it was overblown, and it was done in a way that it wasn't too in your face, and it was almost borderline comedic with the jump scares.
Yeah.
And actually, watching the trailers for this movie, I actually thought that it was going to be done in a purposefully comedic way, but it's not. It's definitely a horror thriller with comedic elements in it.
Well, and I will say, being directed by Jordan Peele concerned me, because although I love Key and Peele and I love their skits and their sketches, I was not a big fan of Keanu. Keanu to me felt like one giant SNL skit that went on way too long. And I was worried that Get Out would have the same kind of feeling to it, where it would have been this big, long, almost skit that would have just be going on too long. So I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be happy with the way that they interspersed the comedy. But I thought they did a really good job. They didn't make it the comedy too slapsticky. They made it a perfect mesh of comedy and horror.
Yeah, it was a good balance, and the comedy for the most part is done from mostly one of the characters, who was awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
And you really want to root for that character.
Yeah, so what was your opinion of the characters overall?
I don't know, a lot of the time the characters seemed interesting but a little bland to me.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the main character, whose name is Chris, and he's visiting his girlfriend's parents. His girlfriend is Rose. I thought Daniel Kaluuya did a really good job portraying his character, a really good job acting, but I wasn't a fan of his character in general. His character just seemed really kind of boring.
Yeah, it was a little bit boring, although you kind of get his backstory and, where he comes from, so you get some good fleshing out, but personality-wise, he's kind of boring.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of personality or charisma, and so I was just kind of feeling like I would have preferred his character to be a little bit more interesting.
Although I should mention that most of the time during the movie, he's kind of in this unknown territory. He's uncomfortable. There's all these, people around him saying strange kind of racist comments, and so you get that he's uncomfortable and that he can't really show his inner self, because he's trying to be good for her parents and
trying to make a good impression.
Exactly. So overall, I really liked the movie.
I did too. I would give it an A+. I would definitely go see it again. I thought it was a top-notch horror movie.
I would probably see it again, maybe if it was a rental or on Netflix or something like that. I don't think it was the best movie, and it was definitely far from the worst. I do think it was a very good movie. And if you are in the mood, and if you like tension-filled thrillers, I think this is a really great movie to go see. So now heading into spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, definitely go back and then come back to the video and join us in the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so first off, this movie is fairly predictable.
Yeah, I felt like I was able to predict at least part of the ending just based off the trailers. I felt that, I hope it's not another one of those movies where the main character lures the other character in a trap. Right from the previews, I thought, the girlfriend's going to lure him there. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it was pretty easy to predict that. Even from the trailers, they definitely showed too much in the trailers and too much of like the tension-filled parts of the movie, But I think that they should have kept the trailers at more of a teaser, like short clip kind of status. And I think they should do that with most horror films, because horror films with the trailers, they tend to give a lot of it away, and it really takes a lot of the scares and the tension out of it, because you know what's coming. A lot of the times when I was watching a scene, I'm like waiting for that one shot of the lady like being weird, So it kind of took me out of the movie a little bit.
Yeah. But I will say, even though I kind of predicted the ending, and you're also able to easily predict just from the previews too, that these black characters are being controlled in some way. I mean, it's pretty obvious, even from the beginning of the movie and from the previews. So those are the two revelations at the end of the movie that aren't really shocking. You're like, okay, I knew they were being controlled, and I knew that the girlfriend was in on it. So the part that's really interesting is the reason why they're doing it and how they do it.
Yeah, exactly. Because from the trailers, of course, and most of the movie, you think it's just the straight up hypnosis stuff.
Yeah.
But then it turns out to be that they're actually swapping brains
in a way
with their bodies, which you have to kind of accept for this movie to make within the reality of this movie, basically.
But I did still enjoy the ending, even though some of it was predictable, and I liked the way that they explained the reason why they were doing it and how they were doing it. So I thought that was really well done. And I also think they did a good job with the girlfriend. It's almost like they knew that was predictable. So they made her character like overly conscientious about stereotypes. Like she gets mad at the police officer for asking to see his license.
Right. And I figured out like why she did that is because she didn't want the cop to see his license if a missing persons report comes along.
Oh, I did not get that. I thought that they made her character that way. And then she seems like overly attentive to the way that her parents are acting.
Yeah.
And she even comments that they're acting weird. So then I think that makes you think, oh, well, maybe she's not in on it because she doesn't seem to, be happy with the way her family's acting. She seems embarrassed by it. And then when he wants to go, she's like, yeah, let's leave. So for a minute there, you're thinking to yourself, maybe she doesn't know what's going on. But then you have to think, how could she not?
Yeah, because I was thinking about that after seeing the movie, and I'm like, wait, she was like overly protective against like that cop, and she's like, well, why do you need to see his license? And you think that she's just being overprotective of her boyfriend, but then later on seeing it, it's like, okay, so she didn't want the cop to see his license.
Yeah, but that brings me to a question I have about this movie. I don't necessarily think it's a plot hole, but it does raise some questions because they clearly do this a lot with all the pictures of all the different black people you see her with. She clearly brings home black men frequently and auctions them off to these old white people.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, like, if that's their strategy, if that's how that family operates and makes money, then how come they don't try harder to conceal all the weird stuff that's going on? Because even Rose points out how weird things are to Chris. So she knows that things look strange. So why don't they try harder to make things look less strange? Like, why don't the grandparents, the two black characters who are kind of like the servants, Walter and Georgina, why don't those two black characters who are apparently the grandparents in their bodies, why don't they, not be servants? Why don't they act like they're just part of the family?
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of thought that it was all just kind of a show for Chris, because those two people just, living in the house, I mean, they could make up some sort of story, but it would look kind of strange to Chris, Oh,
okay.
Even though it kind of looks strange to him already, but then they said, yeah, we're just the housekeeper and the whatever, but we love this family.
Yeah. The other thing that I question is the character Walter. He's doing his running exercises at night, and which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
But then and so he knows, because he sees that Chris is going to get hypnotized, right? I feel like he must know that Chris is going to go get hypnotized at that point, because that's their strategy. That's what they do. And one of the characters, even, I think it is Walter, who mentions that, oh, you were in with Miss Armitage for a really long time. And so the whole time Chris thought it was a dream. And then when he talks to Walter, he realizes that it wasn't a dream, that it actually did happen.
Yeah, so why did he bring it to his attention?
Yeah, because if that's supposed to be the grandpa in there, in that body, why would he bring that to his attention? Why wouldn't they just let him think that it's a dream?
Yeah, and that's kind of some of the stuff that I was talking to you earlier after we saw the movies, that you kind of just have to fill in with your own head.
Yeah.
The grandparents, you have to kind of fill in with your own head. They're acting weird because it's not their body.
Yeah.
So that's kind of them trying to... I mean, that's how they have to communicate. They can't communicate like normal because it's not their body.
Yeah, so that's kind of the sense I got too, because my other question was, although these are old people in these bodies, they don't speak like old people. They speak like robots, the way they speak.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, they're just talking funny because they're old white men. It's like, no, they're talking funny. They're talking like robots. Like, even if you were an older man, that's not how you would speak. So I thought that was kind of strange. Like, why are you speaking in this robotic way if you're supposed to actually be a white old man in that body? So my thought was, okay, well, maybe it's because of the transplant, the surgery, the way it works. Maybe that's just that's like a side effect of it, I guess.
Yeah, like a side effect.
But if that's true, if a side effect is that you become very robotic and it's hard for you, because, sometimes the original personality does take over, then why would you want to have that surgery in the first place?
Well, so you can live longer and have a stronger body.
Yeah, I suppose. It just seems like not very appealing if you aren't even fully in control of your body a lot of the times.
Yeah, and it is weird how, they basically transplant brains, right? The whole brain, or is it just part of the brain?
Well, they did explain that. They said it was most of the brain, but the part that attaches the brain to the neck and everything,
to the brainstem.
The brainstem, they said that they had to keep that. So they said, you're still in there. You're somewhere in there, but you're suppressed.
You're in the sunken place.
You're in the sunken place. So it's basically like two minds in one body.
Yeah, and a sudden flash basically brings out, through the optic nerve, brings out that other personality, and they're in control for a very short period of time, which leads me into how great the foreshadowing and setup for certain things were in this movie. It was some of it was predictable, but some of it was really well done.
And even though it was predictable, it was still enjoyable to see how it how everything ties together. Because even though it's predictable, you still don't understand why certain things are happening until the end when they tie it all together.
As well as the whole how she hypnotized him was kind of strange because okay, does she have certain powers? Because all she was doing was making the sounds with the cup. And I guess, okay, how does that hypnotize somebody? But I guess that did it, so okay.
I think you can just chalk it up to she was an expert in hypnotism and the husband was an expert in neurosurgery. So
yeah.
It put the two together and that's how they were able to do that.
Yeah. And I actually had a theory that the brother was trying to win auctions to get the African Americans that are strong to go do some sort of underground fights for him or something.
Because he kept trying. And there's another thing that was kind of strange about the movie is the reason they say that they want black people specifically is because of their DNA. They're typically stronger, faster, according to this family. That they have better physical abilities.
And the grandpa wanted his running.
Yeah, so the grandpa wants the character's ability to run fast. But Chris, they're asking him, before the auction, oh, what's your golf pose like? What's your golf stance like? Or do you play basketball or are you a wrestler? And so they're asking him all these questions. And every time he's like, no, not really. I mean, I played basketball in high school, but, and he doesn't seem very athletic at all.
Yeah.
And so it's weird that Rose would select him. And in the end, the reason he's sold off is for his youth, basically, and his ability to see.
Yeah, his eyes.
I mean, you could have found any young person who has the ability to see.
So it's convenient that... So why do they have the auction? This Chris is the perfect candidate for this blind gallery owner guy.
Yeah.
So why do they have the auction in the first place? He's not a golfer, like you said. He's not a wrestler or anything. He's a photographer. So he'd be perfect match for this guy. So you'd think that they would purposefully select him for this guy, for this one guy, instead of having a whole auction for him.
I think they have the auctions regularly to make money. So I think they bring those, like a black candidate once a year or something, to the home, and they don't know anything about it. Rose dates the person for like 4 years or whatever. She brings them, everybody comes, and that whole like party is meant to the whole party is like meant to get to know him. So all the, you know, people walk around, ask him questions if he likes to golf, they touch his arm to see how strong he is. Yeah. You know, they're all asking him all these questions. And then they get to bid on him. And I think that probably makes them more money than just matching him to somebody. But I thought that was a really interesting premise, because the whole time I'm like, why are I noticed that they keep bringing up sports. They kept bringing up the running and the golf and the wrestling. And I'm thinking to myself, what does sports have to do with anything? Because Krista's not sporty at all, clearly. Yeah. And then you find out, they're auctioning him off, and each old person at that party is looking for something different in the candidate that they want.
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't really predict the actual auctioning part, because at that point we thought it was still like the hypnosis thing.
It's interesting how the dad said, let's go play bingo. And then you find out later that bingo is their tools for how because they have to do a silent auction, basically. Yeah. So that Chris isn't suspicious. And you get the vibe that the girlfriend, Rose, wants to take Chris for a walk because you can tell he's upset.
Yeah, and she seems upset too about it.
But then later you realize, oh no, she knew they were going to do the auction, exactly. So she needed to take him on a walk while they completed the auction. That was part of the whole plan.
From the start of the auction, I was like, okay, so she brought him off of there on purpose.
Yeah, I didn't get that till later, but that was kind of cool how you later realize like how Rose is part of it, because the whole time you're not sure completely. You're like, does she know what her parents are doing, or is she completely oblivious? Because she was a really good actress. But there are a couple things I like too. For example, the fact that he had a hard time calling people and telling them that was going on.
Yeah, his friend mainly.
I really liked that they didn't just rely on the whole, it's out, in the boondocks, and there's no cell phone service out there, so you're not going to be able to get cell phone service, because that's so typical and just not even really believable.
Such a horror movie trope.
Yeah, and instead of doing that, they kept like unplugging his phone. So I liked that better, that they found a way to get around that.
Yeah, and then at the closest opportunity he had when all the shit started hitting the fan, at his earliest opportunity, he grabbed his phone, called 911. Whereas in horror movies, if they have a phone, they even when they're in danger, they don't call 911. But this instance, the closest chance he got to get his phone and call 911, he did.
Yeah, I like that part too. But I will say, I do think the movie would have been a little better if they had made his character more charismatic and more interesting. Yeah. Because the whole time, he's just very passive. And you can tell he has a problem with things.
Yeah, exactly.
But he kind of doesn't even say... Even in the beginning, the girlfriend's Rose is like, oh, you're packing. And he's like, yep, got that. He doesn't have a lot of facial expressions. He's just kind of always really melancholy throughout the whole movie. And I kind of would have liked it better if he was a little bit more feisty, or maybe a little bit more just charismatic.
Yeah, and every time she asked him if something was wrong or whatever, he's like, yeah, well, no, I'm good.
Yeah, never mind, it's fine, whatever, And so I almost wonder if they made his character that way on purpose because they wanted to make Rose such a strong and charismatic character, and they needed to contrast that to him. Yeah. Possibly, but I do think I still would have liked it better if he was a more interesting character. He didn't have any reason to be chosen. I didn't feel like there was nothing special about his, or at least they didn't reveal anything about his physical abilities to be very special or unique. Like, he's this great pro basketball player, or, a really fast swimmer.
He used to do judo.
Yeah.
Which he didn't show later on at all when he was fighting the brother, which I was like, okay, he's going to judo flip him or something. But he didn't. He just stabbed him in the leg.
Yeah. So I almost feel like, okay.
So there's no point to him learning judo or that whole little spiel.
Yeah, his character just seemed very bland. And you'd think if he was a really good, athletic people in the past would have been able to escape a little bit more easily if they're looking for super athletic people. But
right.
I guess my favorite part of the movie was the auctioning. I thought that was very clever. Like, we'll bring you here. Because I was thinking that earlier on. Like, why are they dragging this whole thing out? Like, why did they just hypnotize him and then basically let him go? You know, why are they dragging out the process of turning him into basically a robot? And then you find out, oh, it's because they have to sell him off and they want to get all these people to come over and fight over him and bid higher. And I actually thought that was really interesting part of the movie, how they take these black men and they don't even know that they're like the hot commodity. But everybody is at that party for them, and they don't even know it. So I thought that was really scary, a really scary thought. And I thought it was really the most interesting and best part of the movie.
Yeah, it definitely is scary, especially thinking about the sunken place in which you are down there. And when the vessel's eyes are open, you can see the world outside, but you can't do anything. You're just stuck in that sunken place, and that's pretty terrifying to me.
Andre is the character who is dressed. He's the one who tells him to get out. So he takes a picture of Andre with his phone because I'm not sure why he wants to take the picture, because he thinks he recognizes him perhaps, and he wants to send the picture to Rob.
Yeah, just to see if... Because he can tell, like, things are really weird. These people are very weird, and he wants to send the picture of the guy to his friend.
And I actually really liked Andre's character. The person who plays Andre, Lakeith Stanfield. I liked his... And he didn't have a very big role, but the role he did have, he did a really good job acting that out, I thought. And I just really liked his character. I would have liked more of him, more of his character. And I actually would have liked at the end if we had seen Chris and Rob do something to try to save. I felt like he was charismatic too. So I would have almost wondered what the movie would have been like if he were the main character. Andre's story.
Yeah, maybe for the sequel or prequel.
The prequel, yeah, we could see Andre's story.
So, about the ending to this movie, very, like, not a whole lot of action or anything, a lot of suspense, thriller, tension, and then boom, he finally figures out a way to escape them with the earplug stuff. Which
I still think it would be very difficult to bend your head in a way to get the cotton in your ears.
Yeah, and that was also foreshadowed because he kept scratching like he did when he was a kid when his mom died, and he was scratching at that couch. So yeah, he got that stuff basically, I guess, bent all the way down, plugged his ears up so that the hypnotism didn't work, which I thought was, I don't know, slightly contrived, but
yeah,
but I can see how it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
And I like how everything added up to that moment and contributing to his escape.
Yeah, I guess I would have liked it a little better if prior to that scene, they had showed him being, like, very clever, or, like, you got the sense that he just didn't seem like there was any qualities that they were highlighting in his character that would help him escape. And then all of a sudden he became very insightful, very clever, and, very good at killing people. It's like the whole time they didn't really show him to be someone who had, like, those type of skills.
Well, I felt that he was just grabbing objects and hitting people with them and basically surprising them because they all had their guard down. They thought he was under hypnosis, so he was able to hit the brother.
Yeah.
And then surprise the dad, which I loved how he got the dad with the freaking taxidermy deer. That was awesome because earlier on the dad says how much he hates deer, and so he killed him with the taxidermy deer. That was awesome. With the mother, I love that little scene with them staring at each other, and she was like surprised, and there's the teacup right in the middle of the room, and they all each had to kind of jump at it.
And he smashes the teacup.
Yeah,
that was good too. Yeah, I like the ending, and I really like the ending how Rob finally... Because earlier on, you think that Rob's going to come save him. But really, Rob, he does, but Chris does a lot of the work, too.
Well, yeah, Chris makes it out of the house after killing everybody.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with the setting stuff up again, because you see that police officer in the beginning of the movie, because he calls 911, you think that the cop car that pulls up is that same police officer, so you're like, oh no, he's gonna like shoot him or something like that, but then it turns out to be his friend.
Yeah, I like how when he opens the door, it says airport.
Yeah.
And so at first you think it's gonna be like this white police officer, but then when he opens the door and it says airport, because he's bragging the whole time about how he's TSA. I also thought that was a clever addition to the movie, how they made them TSA agents, but like they want to be treated like a real... I thought that was kind of a funny premise. So I liked that.
And that's basically when you find out that the grandma and grandpa are both the landscaper and housekeeper.
Because the whole time I still, even after the whole brain surgery part, I was still thinking when he cuts open that blind man's brain, I was thinking, oh, he's going to put like some chip in his brain to where he can control Chris. I still didn't understand that he was actually removing his brain and putting it into Chris's body. And I didn't understand that until the end when the Walter character is chasing after Chris and Rose yells, "Get him, Grandpa!" And then I'm thinking, oh, that is legit her grandpa inside that body.
Yeah, and Chris was really messed up at that time, so I'm like, oh, he's fucked. But he had his phone camera, which then was able to change Grandpa back to his original self for a moment.
Yeah.
Which then kills himself.
Yeah, but you got to think about that because, I mean, if it's a brain transplant, there's really nothing they can do to get their lives back. I mean, they're done for.
Yeah.
So
that was the right move on his part.
Yeah. So that was interesting. So yeah, I really liked the ending. I thought the ending, it ended in a good place, but I still wonder, like, what happened after that, you know? Because there's still all those other white characters with black servants and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
That they've inhabited their bodies. So what's going to happen with all them? Yeah, the Armitages are dead, but what's going to happen with all those other people?
I think that kind of just leaves it open for a sequel or prequel.
Yeah. So, anyway.
T.S. motherfucking A.
Overall, it was a really well done horror movie. I felt like they tied up all the loose ends really well. Everything, you know, makes sense at the end when you go back and think about like how everything's constructed and put together.
Yeah, aside from being a little predictable,
I will say some of the dialogue was a little bit...
Yeah, and I felt like Rose's character, after finding out that it was an act the whole time, I felt like before that, her character was a little over the top with her girlfriendness. Yeah,
I kind of thought a lot of the dialogue throughout, just even the dialogue between Chris and Rose, the dialogue between Chris and the parents, the dialogue just with everybody seemed a little unnatural. It just felt unnatural, a little scripted, but for the most part, the movie was very good.
Yeah, it almost seems like that was purposeful, though, to add a little bit of cheesiness to it, I guess.
Or a little bit of discomfort. Like, you get the sense that they're not being natural.
Like artificial.
Yeah, everything's artificial. That could have been purposefully done.
Some of the parts were a little bit slow, but for the most part, very enjoyable movie. Definitely go see it if you haven't, and if you haven't, you have now been spoiled.
Yeah, very great movie. I would give it an A. I would go see it again.
I suppose I would give it 3.9 out of 5, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was good.
It was very good.
Yeah, go check it out, or at very least, give it a rental when it comes to Redbox or Netflix.
All right, well, thanks for listening.
See y'all later.